Ever feel like you're totally rocking it one day, then bam, the next, it's like trying to function with, I don't know, brain full of cotton candy.
Okay, I gotta admit, that's a pretty vivid image.
Right. But it's that jarring for a lot of adults with autism when they experience skill regression. And it can be seriously disorienting.
It really is, and it's often tied to this thing we call autistic burnout.
Mhm.
But before anyone jumps to, oh, just another word for stress, let's be clear, this is different.
Way different. So for anyone tuning in who might be thinking, burnout, just had a big week, I get it. What would you say is the core difference here?
Imagine this. You're constantly translating your thoughts and actions into a language everyone else seems to speak instinctively. Exhausting, right? That's masking just one element feeding into autistic burnout.
Okay, so masking, let's unpack that a bit because it's one of those things that can be easy to misunderstand.
Absolutely. It's not just about acting normal, it's way deeper. Think constantly filtering your natural responses, how you communicate, even your body language, all to fit these unspoken neurotypical expectations over time. That takes a huge toll.
It's like running a marathon in shoes that don't quite fit, except you're also getting judged on your running form the whole time.
And the crowd's yelling at you in a language you only half understand. That's the sensory overload part.
Oh man, don't even get me started on that. It's like someone cranked the world's volume up to 11 and replaced the dimmer switch with a strobe light.
And then handed you sandpaper for a blanket. It's constant. It's relentless. And when you combine that with the effort of masking, it's a recipe for burnout.
And we can't forget about the lack of support, right? Like even when you're trying to explain what's going on, it can feel like you're talking into a void.
100%. That feeling of constantly having to justify who you are, not having your needs met or even acknowledged, that just compounds everything else.
Which brings us back to skill regression. Because if you're dealing with all of that, it's no wonder things you used to be able to do suddenly feel impossible.
Exactly. And that's what trips so many people up. They think, wait, you used to be able to do this. What changed? But it's not about forgetting how to do something. It's more like your brain's just hit its bandwidth limit.
Yeah, it's like all your mental RAM is being used to just trying to keep up with the demands of daily life, leaving very little processing power for anything else. And I think that's where those really specific examples from our sources really hit home. Like suddenly, even a casual conversation with a coworker can feel like climbing Mount Everest.
Oh, tell me about it. Or that thing you used to do without thinking, like your morning routine or following a recipe. Suddenly, it's like reading ancient Greek.
Hmm.
And what's heartbreaking is, from the outside, it can look like someone's being lazy or difficult, when in reality, they're struggling to do things that used to come easily.
It's like being judged on a performance when you haven't even had a chance to rehearse.
And the script keeps changing without you knowing. It's crucial to remember that this is about understanding the very real, often invisible, challenges faced by many adults with autism. We're talking about a different operating system trying to function in a world designed for a different one.
And that's why we're diving deep into this, because it's about so much more than just feeling stressed out. This is about recognizing the signs, understanding the causes, and most importantly, exploring ways to prevent things from getting to that point of burnout in the first place. So we're talking about burnout, but how do you know if it's actually happening? Like, what are the warning signs before you hit that wall?
Okay, so picture this. You're already dealing with the sensory overload we talked about, right? With burnout, it's like someone hit the turbo button on all your senses.
So that feeling of everything being too much, it gets amplified.
Big time. That hum from the refrigerator could sound like a construction site. That soft sweater you used to love feels like a Brillo pad. And because we're wired to process so much sensory input during social situations.
It's exhausting even thinking about it.
Exactly. So social withdrawal becomes a coping mechanism. Not because you dislike people, but because every interaction feels like running a marathon in those ill-fitting shoes we mentioned.
Your social battery's just stuck on 1%. No wonder people retreat. And what about that feeling of brain fog, like trying to remember your own phone number? Is that part of this too?
Oh, 100%. Burnout messes with what we call executive function planning, organizing, remembering. It's like your brain's filing cabinet is overflowing and you can't find anything in there.
So it's not just being forgetful or scattered, it's a symptom.
Exactly. And then there's the emotional roller coaster. You know that feeling when you're already on edge and the tiniest thing sets you off?
Like the wifey going out when you're trying to meet a deadline. Don't even get me started.
Exactly. With burnout, your emotional regulation's working overtime, but it's beyond exhausted. So, yeah, those little things, they feel huge.
It's like your inner alarm system is stuck on high alert, blaring sirens at a fly landing on the wall. And I imagine All of this can be easy to brush off, especially at first.
Oh, totally. I'm just tired, stressed, need more coffee. But that's the thing about burnout, it often sneaks up on you.
Like that feeling when you're driving and you ignore the check engine light, hoping it'll just magically disappear.
And then you're stuck on the side of the road, kicking yourself for not addressing it sooner. Recognizing those early signs is crucial because it is manageable, especially if we catch it early.
Which I think is a perfect segue into our next topic, prevention and recovery. Because while recognizing the signs is essential, it's equally important to know that burnout isn't a life sentence. There are things you can do both to prevent it and to recover from it. Okay, so we know burnout is a thing, we know how to spot it, but how do we actually stop it from happening in the first place? Because the advice is usually something like, just avoid stressful situations, which, come on, isn't exactly practical, is it?
You're preaching to the choir here. It's like telling someone to just stop being autistic for a day, not exactly helpful. But here's the thing. Effective prevention. Totally doable. We just need to shift the goalpost a bit.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What do you mean, shift the goalpost?
Instead of chasing this mythical, stress-free existence, spoiler alert, doesn't exist, we aim for what I call sustainable balance. We work with the realities of being autistic, not against them.
Love that. So less about becoming superhumanly immune to burnout, more about setting ourselves up for success in a way that actually, works with our wiring.
Exactly. And one of the biggest game changers, addressing the masking elephant in the room.
Right, because we talked about how draining that is, but what does it look like to actually mask less, especially when it feels so ingrained?
It starts with creating even tiny pockets in your life where you can shed those layers, be your authentic self. Think of them like decompression chambers.
Ooh, I like that. So it's about intentionally building those safe-to-be-me spaces into your day-to-day.
100%. Maybe it's that one friend who gets your communication style, or an online community where you can engage without the same social filter. However you find them, those spaces become vital recharge points.
So it's like strategically placing those little oases of authenticity within the, let's call it the neurotypical desert we often navigate.
Now you're getting it. But those oases, they only get you so far. We need to talk about the practical stuff, those daily routines and structures that make such a difference.
Because honestly, sometimes it's not even the big stuff, right? It's when you're already running on fumes and then you have to make a million tiny decisions like what to eat, what to wear.
Decision fatigue is real. But the good news, routine is your new best friend. And before you say it, I don't mean you have to become a robot with a color-coded spreadsheet for life.
Thank goodness for that, because I'm all about embracing a little chaos.
As you should be. Think of it more like creating predictable rhythms in your day. Even small things, a consistent morning routine, pre-planning meals, these can free up so much mental energy.
So it's about taking some of those smaller decisions off your plate so you have more bandwidth for, well, everything else life throws at you.
Exactly. And since we're on the topic of bandwidth, let's talk boundaries.
Ooh, yes. Boundaries are like those invisible force fields that protect your energy.
And learning to say no to things that drain you, even if it feels awkward at first, that's self-preservation, not selfishness.
Seriously, sometimes saying no to something you don't have the capacity for, that's the ultimate act of self-care.
100%. Which brings us to recovery. Because even with the best prevention strategies, sometimes burnout happens, and that's okay. But it's important to remember recovery isn't a switch you flip, it's a journey. And often the most powerful tool in your recovery toolkit is the simplest: rest.
And we're not just talking about catching some Z's here, right?
Although sleep is amazing, don't get me wrong, but this is more about giving your whole system, your mind, body, senses a break from the constant demands of, well, being autistic in a world that doesn't always get it.
It's like hitting the pause button on the world, even if it's just for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And giving yourself permission to just be.
Exactly. And as you rest, it's the perfect time to take stock. Are you overcommitted? Are there things you can step back from, delegate, ask for help with?
Because sometimes burnout is that nudge from the universe to reassess those expectations we put on ourselves.
100%. We don't have to do it all, be it all, for everyone, all the time. And as you're reassessing, don't underestimate the power of reconnecting with your passions. Even if you don't have the energy you used to, those activities that light you up, they're restorative.
It's like reminding yourself what brings you joy, even in those moments when joy feels like a distant memory. And hey, speaking of support, you're not alone in this. Remember that.
Couldn't agree more. There are people out there who get it, who've been there, and who want to help. Therapists specializing in autism, support groups, online communities. These can be lifelines.
Because sometimes just knowing you're not alone, that someone else understands, can make all the difference. And if there's one thing I hope you take away from our deep dive today, it's this. Skill regression, burnout. These are real struggles, but they don't define you. There's support out there, there's information, and there's hope. So keep learning, keep connecting, and keep diving deep into understanding yourself and your experience. Until next time.